Hello and welcome to The Herd Has Spoken, a podcast brought to you by GoMuskOx Men's Apparel. All right, guys, if you've ever wondered what it's like to try to prevent ammunition from blowing up, or you've wondered about the secrets of outdoor and wildlife photography, this is the episode of The Herd Has Spoken for you. I'm really excited about my conversation with Nick Brown. And as a quick reminder, for those of you who enjoy the podcast, please go ahead and click subscribe. Please go ahead and leave a review for us. Those things really help us here at the podcast. And today, like I said, I'm really excited to share my conversation with Nick. We get into a lot of interesting things, including the role of military today in terms of keeping us safe, how Nick views home as a result of continuing to move around so frequently with respect to the military. And also we got into a lot around his passion for photography, how you can learn to enhance your photography skills, and how he goes about capturing the moment. So with no further ado, my conversation with Nick Brown. Nick Brown, welcome to The Herd Has Spoken.
What's up, everybody?
Glad to have you here. So you are a munitions technician in the Air Force, which my understanding is you get to blow up a bunch of really cool shit every day. So tell us a little bit about some of the stuff that you get to blow up.
It's not actually blowing up. Actually, avoiding blowing up is my job. But we build, process, test, and assemble all things that do blow up. If it does blow up, it has to come from us or through us first. EOD is actually a whole different career field. They're the guys that are out there blowing stuff up. We do get to work with them sometimes, which is a lot of fun. We get to go out in the back in the mountains and blow up stuff that's broken or bad or whatever. But no, we build
the anti-blow up. You're the anti.
Yeah, exactly.
So you mentioned the EOD, so sorry to interrupt you, but the EOD means what?
EOD is explosive ordnance disposal. They're the guys that if we break something, we give it to them. They take it off in the mountains. Sometimes we get to go with them and have fun and blow up stuff. But yeah, that's what they do. My job is to prevent blowing up until the intended time.
Okay, so we'll have to keep you away from Matt Carricker and Demolition Ranch, whose job is to always blow up stuff, right?
Yeah.
So you grew up in California, lived in LA for a bit, and lived in the desert. Now you're in Alaska, so there's a whole lot in between. Would love to hear how a kid from Southern California decided to join the military. What was behind that decision?
Like you said, I was originally from LA. And when I was younger, maybe like pre-teenage, we moved to the high desert, which is like a Palmdale, Lancaster area in California, Antelope Valley. And it was kind of I guess you could say like a dead end town, just not a lot going on there. A lot of people in that area just tend to work the same jobs over and over again, same career fields, and never leave that area. And I was just decided I wanted to go see the world. And I did try college for a little bit, went to College of the Canyons in Santa Clarita, and realized real quick that's expensive. And so stopped in an Air Force recruiter and one day, and they were like, hey, yeah, for college is free through us, come through. And I was like, cool, can I go see the world? They're like, yeah, let's do it. I was like, sign me up. I picked a job, and they were like, yeah, you want to blow stuff up? I was like, yeah, I want to do that. And they were like, cool, it's not this job, but it's close. I was like,
yeah, all right. Little did you know, they fell into the same trap I did. You fell into the same trap I did, which is you're not actually blowing stuff up. You're preventing things from getting blown up.
Exactly, yep.
Well, so I have to ask this, as the son of a Navy captain, why the Air Force? Was it just where their recruiter was placed close to where you were driving, or was that a conscious choice?
It was at first. It was a not exactly conscious choice. I walked into the recruiter's office, and it was just all four branches all locked in there, right? And I walked in there, and the Army guys came out, and they're like, hey, you're a big dude. Why don't you come join us? And I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll think about it. Marines guys came out. They're like, hey, join us. Don't listen to this Army dude. I was like, oh, okay. Navy guys came out, and I was like, well, hold on. Where's the Air Force dude? And they're like, well, he's been on a 3-hour lunch. And I was like, well, I want 3-hour lunches. So I was like, I'm going to pick the Air Force side. No, it was a conscious decision. I actually wanted to fly. And then I learned that there's a height limit on on certain fighter aircrafts, and I'm 6'5", so that didn't work out for me. But I figured I'd do something at least related to it. So
Well, what is the height limitation? How close are we here?
I think now I might be wrong on this. I think it was 6'2" was the limit at the time, and you
Okay.
might be able to get wavered, but I'm not 100% on that. And that was for fighter aircraft. Little did I know that there was all kinds of other aircraft I could have flown and things like that. Then there was the problem of the degree. Like I said, college was expensive, and I wanted to nab that free college first. So so that might still be in my future. I might still be able to fly in the future. That there's plans in the works to maybe transition over to the officer side. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a huge transition to be able to even have the opportunity to make. So that's exciting for sure. So when people think about the military, I think there's a lot of different things that commonly come to mind from an average civilian's perspective. So having been in the Air Force for a number of years, how is being in the military different than how it's generally portrayed?
That's a good one. So in a lot of ways, it's very similar. We still have a typical, I guess you could say 9 to 5, except that it's not necessarily a 9 to 5. In my specific job, it's about a 7 to 4. We do have a lot more flexibility than most civilian jobs. For instance, civilian jobs, your lunch starts at let's just say noon, and it ends at 1. There is no leeway. Well, in the military, your lunch might be 15 minutes, or maybe your supervision wants to be cool and give you, like I said, 2 or 3 hour lunch. It just depends. There's a mentality of working till the job is done, not necessarily having a set of hours. When I was stationed in Las Vegas, it's one of the busiest places for my career field. There were times where my supervisor had to say, "Hey, look, we got to stay late. We got to work through Saturday. I'm sorry, but the work has to get done." Um, Flat out, that's what the mission is, and I think that's probably the biggest difference for me was adjusting to that mindset of like, oh, really? Like there's a goal in mind rather than just I have to work from X time to X time. And I actually kind of like that though. You get to kind of look back at the end of it and say, oh wow, we did that, we accomplished that. So
Yeah, that's something that's really satisfying. And I think so many of us that work in sort of technology jobs or selling product jobs, it's tough to see a beginning and an end point. But
mhm.
that's something that's really satisfying. And I know a lot of people who may not even get the option like you do to have that end point in your job, but pursue that as a hobby. You know, maybe it's roofing and being able to say like, no, I put a new roof on that house
Yeah,
and
I
you
built that,
see when
you
it's
know, that
done.
yeah, you get to look back at that final product. And one of the differences though is, in the case of someone who's in roofing, they get to finish that product and they're like, awesome, I put a roof on someone's head. But for us, it's I built this trailer full of, bombs or missiles or whatever, and those get sent out to the line and they go off and they do their thing. And whether it's target practice or actually putting, as they say, warheads on foreheads, just depending on where you are. But it's always a satisfying feeling to know that it's like we're not we're not the ones in the aircraft, but we are still at that tip of the spear, or at least on the edge of the spear.
Yeah, and I think that's really interesting, right? So when you talk about being able to create these weapons and these explosives, I mean, we live in a physical world, and those are things that are made to cause physical damage. And
Hmm.
so it's easy for us to think like, yeah, hey, you're creating these things for physical damage. But I think there's a different philosophy, and I'd really be curious to hear what you think about Teddy Roosevelt and his famous quote here: "Speak softly and carry a big stick, you'll go far." And
Hmm.
I'd love to hear what you, Nick, think about that philosophy and how it pertains to what you are doing in your world working with munitions every day.
I think I myself 100% agree with that statement. And again, I got to jump in here and say, all these opinions that anything I express is my opinion, not necessarily that of the Air Force. But I think personally that the best defense is being able to have a good offense. If the world out there is thinking, well, we've got the best trained munitions troop or the best trained pilots and the best trained this and that, and then all the additional components that go into accomplishing that mission, no one's going to be out there trying to mess with us directly. And that's, I think, part of the reason why we've maintained a pretty strong degree of homeland peace for such a long time. The kind of mentality of carrying that big stick.
And to what extent is that motivating to you on a day-to-day basis?
It really varies. So the way my career field works is that we're all munitions, right? But we each there's so many of us and so many components to my job that we each get separated into different we call them sections basically. So right now I'm logistics. I move things from A to B. But 2 years ago I was the one when I was stationed in Korea, I was building the actual bombs that was like ready to go to defend the nation. If North Korea ever did their thing, or anything popped off crazy, it was like they were my name was on those bombs. Ready to go and defend whatever we could. And I think that one was that moment was critical motivation to me. We do those, we call them exercises all the time, where we practice as if it's really real world happening. And I think those are the moments where it really hits home a lot of times, where I'm like, wow, this is real. There's 50 million people in this country that we're here to defend for, and until we can't anymore. And that, I think, was probably the most critical moment for me, was actually building, like, hands on the bombs. I'm certifying them, saying that they're good to go and ready to do the mission.
Does that ever become? I mean, there's a lot of pressure behind that. To your point, right? I mean, at the end of the day, what you're doing every day is protecting America, and America is 300 plus million people, but it's also an ideal that the vast majority of the world aspires towards. And
Hmm.
and so on one hand, I mean, that's tremendously motivating, but there's another side to that, where that's a lot of pressure as well. I mean, is that something that you or your team, spend much time thinking about? And I'm sure not when you're with the guys doing your thing at 2 p.m., but is that something that you're thinking about, at night, when you're trying to go to sleep?
Um, it does cross my mind, but I think, kind of going back to how I said, it's like being able to look back at that, that trailer full of bombs, or that, like you said, the roof. I think we compartmentalize down to just that one concept of saying, like, I finished this job. I did good that at the end of the day. I didn't take any quality assurance fails or anything like that. Um, just being able to say, I checked the boxes. I went home and just get to go to bed at night knowing that, hey, I did the job.
Yeah.
I think that kind of becomes more about what it's really about. I remember, initially when I first got into this career field, I walked up to my first, like, live explosive, and I put my hand on it, and I was like, ooh, ooh, this is freaky. And once that got out of my system, you kind of get desensitized to it. There's so many safety protocols in place too that you don't really think
Right.
about too much of it. But no, I think it really is just, it's about compartmentalizing down to the job at the moment, and then go to sleep. Next day, what's the next job at the moment? And we just do that over and over again.
Well, speaking of compartmentalizing, I think it's really interesting is that you're obviously, a member of the United States Air Force and spend a ton of time with munitions, but you're also an outdoors photographer who spends a lot of time with wildlife and mountains and scenic beauty. And that's an interesting separation, because you don't often think about the military and the arts going together, right? So I'd love to hear, how those two things come together in your world, and how they actually play off one another.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess a lot of people think that, like, the military, when you're in it, it consumes everything. That's not the case at all. At least not for the Air Force. There's a lot of times where you get to go out and go. You can even go hike and have trips with, like, your squadron mates, or your shop mates, whatever. And go have that same degree of fun. And photography's always been a part of my life. When I was a kid, I had, like, you remember those old school, like, plastic Kodak, like, roll films, like, you
Yeah,
had to swap them out.
absolutely.
Yeah. So I had one of those, and I remember, it was my mom's actually, and I took it and I went to the backyard and I was taking pictures of, like bugs and, like, up close shots of, like, grass blades and stuff like that. And she found out that I wasted all the film, and she comes up just right on the back of the head. She's like, "Stop wasting my film." And I must have been, I don't know, 8 or 9 at the time, and ever since then I was just hooked. Um, I think I started taking it seriously when I picked up I got, like, a starter kit DSLR, when I found out that, I was seeing all these pictures of, like, the Milky Way, out in the desert, and I was stationed in Las Vegas, and I was like, I want to do that. And I figured, I started Googling, like, how can I make this happen? And picked up like a starter kit DSLR. It was like a Nikon D5600 or something, and yeah, I just started going to town with it, and ever since then I've just been hooked. That was about like 6 years ago. I picked that up, and since then I've done a couple upgrades and things like that. But I don't know, I just ran with it, and anytime I get some free time, I go out and just go on a hike and take some pictures.
Yeah, I love it, and it certainly treated you well. So for those listening, I mean, obviously we've got links so you can track this down. But on Instagram, you can find Nick at Nick by Northwest. It's got over 70,000 followers so far, so you're in good company to be able to track down a lot of his fantastic photography. And be forewarned, you might see a picture of Nick sporting some muskox as well in some of his adventures. So. Nick, I'd love to hear more, like, putting on your artistic hat. What is it exactly that you want to say with your photographs? And how is it that you get your photographs to deliver that message?
That's a good one. Honestly, it's really just a matter of like trying to capture the moment. I know that's such a cheesy way, like it's such a cliche way of saying it, because that's really what photography is. But um, I like to think that there's not too complicated of a message about it, though. That anyone can get out there and anyone can do this. I'm just a normal dude. I just happen to you know be afforded the opportunities to travel because of my job, but anyone can get out there and go to these places. And I think that's probably one of the great things about photography, is that it gives you an outlet to say, I was there at this moment, I saw the light when it looked like this, and it's never going to look quite the same again. But being able to share, especially through social media, kind of gives you the opportunity to say, you can get out there too. Anyone out there can get out there too and see this same exact thing. Maybe not quite the same as I took it that day, but it'll be similar. At least I hope.
So in that moment, right? So if I'm hearing you correctly, you really want to just capture the moment. So
Mhm.
how do you know then when that moment has arrived? Because when you're out there in the wilderness, I mean, you're living in Alaska now, you're surrounded by mountains constantly.
Mhm.
But how do you know when you've gotten to a point where you need to pause, stop, and take the picture?
um It's it's tough. There's times where I'll have somewhere to be and the light hits the mountain just right, and I'll pull my truck over just like on the side of the road and whip the camera out, and people are driving by looking at me like, this guy's crazy. He's gonna get himself killed. Which, please don't do that if you're out there listening. Be safe and don't be dumb like me. I think it just there's a lot of like rules of photography, like leading lines, rule of thirds. If the lights like in golden hour and things like that, once those things start, you get one or two or three of those things kind of overlapping, you've got a good picture. And there's just kind of like a gut instinct of like, you snap that picture and you're like, I know that one is going to be good. There's like a particular feeling of just knowing that you just got, as what's his name, Peter McKinnon likes to call it, I just got a banger, is his favorite term. So
Yeah, for sure. So where did you learn some of those basics? So you mentioned the rule of third, you mentioned the golden hour. So where did you go to learn that? What would you recommend to someone who's like everybody else in the world, has a cell phone in their pocket and they like to take pictures and they want to start taking things to the next level?
absolutely, just YouTube like crazy. YouTube rule of thirds, YouTube basics of photography, everything. That was probably one of the biggest things for me, was trying to learn those basics. And like compositional techniques are one of the most difficult things for anyone to learn. It's like first learn the exposure triangle, which is your shutter speed, your ISO, your aperture. Learn what aperture even means, and then from there jump straight into composition techniques. And that I think it's something that constantly evolves. You never master it, like, ever. Yeah, you can follow the rule of thirds and the leading lines, but that may not be your favorite thing to photograph. Maybe you like simplistic, maybe you like flat, like simple images. Maybe you just want a mountain peak and the moon above it with like a nice gradient that doesn't follow any of those rules. It's just about what you want to express as a photographer, whatever you can capture at that time. If you liked it, send it.
So for you, are you trying to get better consciously as a photographer? Like, is that something that you aspire towards, or are you just having fun? And when you're out there, you just want to really, enjoy things and find a way to, capture the moment.
It's a bit of both. I think that you're always learning, constantly. You never stop learning. I watched a video from a photographer named Evan Rampt. He's one of my favorites. He talks about the 6 stages of being a photographer, and I'm not going to go too into detail about each stage, but there's a really particular stage that resonated with me. Was that there's a moment at which you realize, this is after you think you're effectively hot shit. Um, at a certain point, you realize, whoa, wait, wow, I have a lot to learn. And you see all these like pros that are absolutely at their top of their game, killing it out there. And you're like, well, what's different here? And you start to kind of humble yourself. And then the whole process repeats itself. And I think that the process never stops. You're always, no matter what you learn, you're always taking that knowledge and reapplying it back at the beginning of that cycle again. But at the same time, you shouldn't let that bring you down from having fun when you go out and take your photos. Enjoy the moment. Um, uh, Another photographer is one of my favorites is Thomas Heaton. He says if you're out there struggling to find a composition, just go out, just go hike. Don't worry about the photos. Just go see, have fun. Just go see what happens, and then sometimes something will just jump out at your eye and take the picture then.
Yeah, I think that's an important metaphor in life in a lot of ways, right? And it's one of
Hmm.
my favorite is, look, if your car's stuck in the snowstorm, and as we're recording this, there's a lot of people, including Texans, who are stuck in a snowstorm right now. It doesn't
Hmm.
matter if you want to go northeast, south, or west. You need to start rocking your car, like so.
Yeah.
Just start going forward and going back, and don't worry about what your end point is. You just need some momentum, and
Yep.
you start making some things happen. And sometimes that's as simple as just going for a hike in the woods, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Clear your
Just
mind, reset things.
take that first step. Just get outside and go do something. Even if it like you don't have to have the grandiose plan of like, oh, I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna take this legendary picture that's gonna sell, so many prints or get so many likes on Instagram. Just go outside. Just
Yep.
enjoy the outdoors and whatever comes of that photographically, awesome. Tell the story then.
So Nick, what is it that motivates you to continue taking pictures, right? You mentioned being able to sell things. Is there a financial motivation for you? Is there a political
Mhm.
motivation, intellectual, emotional? Like what is it that motivates you to keep doing your craft?
I don't, it's going back to the roof. I like the look of saying I did that. I finished that. I made this thing. Not financial at all. I'm extremely fortunate and extremely thankful that the military has afforded me a day-to-day paycheck, four walls and a roof. I didn't always have that luxury of being able to say that. I do sell prints, but I don't rely on them. So I'll have people that are like, "Hey man, can I have a print?" I'm like, yeah, send me your address, just whatever. I think it's really cool to be able to share that with people. In fact, there was just the other day, it was a mother that she said she wanted to get a bunch of photos for her daughter whose name was Aurora. And she wanted to get some prints of the Northern Lights. And I was like, I just hit her up. I was like, hey, send me your address. I've got like 5 prints for you. I'm just going to send them. They don't cost me much to make. And I just enjoy sharing my work with other people more than I enjoy I guess the finance aspect of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it makes sense. It's really more of the whole creative process. But your stuff's great. People go ahead and ask Nick for his stuff, but go ahead and send a check. Venmo him. We want to appreciate people and all the effort that they're putting into their craft. But I want to talk with you a little bit about your travels. So because you're in the military, you've had a fantastic opportunity to travel the world. You live in Alaska now. You lived in South Korea. You lived in Texas. You lived in Vegas. You grew up in California. Um, what is it that you enjoy most about being able to continue to live in different locations?
I think just the concept that there's something new everywhere you go. I mentioned in one of our talks that I'm hoping to go to Europe next. And the great thing about Europe is you could be in Germany, and in 6 hours you're in France or Sweden, London, whatever. I mean, I don't know geographically exactly how quick you could get from A to B, but it's so easy to do. And every one of those different places, it's obviously different country, different culture, different backgrounds, different languages, different food. Food in Korea, by the way, unbelievable. Unbelievable. It was the best food I've ever had in my life. um, I think, yeah, definitely the food was probably a huge major part of it too. But no, I love learning about new cultures, and that kind of goes back to the photo things. Is you get to learn about those cultures, take pictures of it, share that story through Instagram or whatever platform you have.
Is that something that you try to do consciously, is share the culture in the different areas that you've been in, or do you think that just kind of happens by trying to find those moments and capture those moments?
Absolutely conscious. I go there and I seek out the history behind certain things, like in like monuments, or I don't know, the history behind like castles or whatever. And I learn those things. I'll write them down. I have like a little notepad on my phone. And I write down that information, and because I think I don't want to like shove it in people's faces. It's like, hey, I get to do this, haha. But I feel like a lot of people out there don't necessarily have the chance to travel and see the world, but still want to learn these things and know those things. So it's kind of my little way of bringing that culture of other countries to back to America, where most of my followers are.
Sure. Well, as someone who travels so often and has lived in so many different places, I'm curious what does the idea of home mean to you?
Mm. Where my dog is. um, I don't know. That's a good one. That's tough. I'd say uh, actually every time I move, like a full on move, not just visiting somewhere, but I'd say if it gives me, it takes me about 6 months to get that feeling of like, all right, I know these streets. I'm familiar with everything. This feels like home to me. But every few years, that changes for us. But I think that there's a particular feeling after so long where you just know you're like, you get that comfortable feeling after going home from work, where you're looking forward to just unwinding at your, like, whether it's your house, your apartment, whatever. That, I think when you have that feeling, I think that's what home is that feeling of going back to home base and just being able to shut your brain off, watch some TV, get kick up and relax. And I think that's more what home is specifically. It doesn't have to be one particular country or one particular house or even your hometown. It could just be wherever you are most comfortable going back to at the end of the day.
Comfort, safety, consistency. I'm
Absolutely.
hearing those are some of the hallmarks of home, and not to be too aggrandizing here, but I mean ultimately that's so much of what your day to day work is too, is allowing people to feel safe and comfortable with their home, given what you do in the Air Force, and I hope you appreciate that. I certainly appreciate that. Um,
Thank you.
I'm also interested in your take on minimalism, right? So that's a bit of a big, I don't want to necessarily call it a fad, but certainly a trend towards trying to not have much stuff and
Hmm.
clearing out the stuff in your life. As someone who has to move a lot, is that something that you've given much thought to? Do you have a point of view on stuff and its role in your life and happiness?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, I do. I personally, I prefer experiences over um, physical objects. If someone's like, "Hey, what should I get you for your birthday or whatever?" I'm like, "Don't worry about a thing. I prefer going on a trip or going on a, I don't know, out on an adventure. Like, hey, go hiking with me. Go hit up this trail with me real quick. That's a sick birthday present for me. And I think that kind of changing that mindset from the value of like these individual objects um, to the enjoyment of the experience is more beneficial in kind of a mobile lifestyle like this. You do of course have the same stuff that goes from place to place to place. Like I always, you know always have my camera, always have my laptop, phone, whatever method of communication. All of those things kind of stay consistent, which kind of helps you route down into those different locations. And there's also the practical side of it, of the fact that if you don't have a lot, you don't have to carry a lot physically on you on a, like, let's say a hike, or when it comes moving time and they're like, hey, you're going to Germany. It'll take me half the time to pack up my house because I didn't bother buying, you know, an entire house worth of furniture. Instead, maybe I would just like, all right, cool, I'll just buy only the bare minimum of what I need, and then whenever I get out of the military, that's when I'll start. It's like, okay, cool, where do I want to settle down?
Yeah, and I think by you highlighting so many of the amazing experiences that you've had the opportunity to enjoy in the US, in Asia and really globally. I think that's a way of encouraging people to go out there and find the adventure. And
Mm.
it's moving away from some of the vapid shit that I see regularly, where people are, concentrating on things and stuff. And
Hmm.
we're a clothing brand, but we're really focused on trying to help guys get outside and enjoy that adventure. And we feel like we're one really small part of that. But I think that's really cool that, maybe it's conscious, maybe it's not. I'm pretty confident that it is conscious for you, but your work as a photographer is really in line with sort of your belief around what's important to you, and it reflects your worldview of that adventure and the importance of being able to do those sorts of things. And I think that's really cool to have your artistic expression reflect your beliefs. And it's probably tough to do it without having it be so aligned, but I think that's really neat and really powerful stuff.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, it's when you see people in my pictures, those are my friends or my coworkers. It's like those are usually just days where they're like, "Hey man, I just found this trail. You want to go check it out?" I'm like, Yeah, I do. I don't want to sit around in my house and watch TV or I don't know, dream about stuff I can buy in the future. I'm like, I want to go see the world. So I feel like those stories about how me and my coworker almost got chased by a bear the other day. That didn't really happen, but like hypothetically, that makes for a better story 20 years down the road than I don't know, a new gadget you're not going to remember having thrown away in a couple years or whatever. So all that stuff means so much more to me, I think. And it's such a cool concept with being able to take that picture that has my friend in it, and then they always are like, "Hey man, can I get a print of that?" I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely." And then so I'll give them a print. They hang it up in their house, and then they tell other people that story. And I'm like, "Oh, this is so cool!" Like it's so awesome because then they're taking that memory, they're sharing it with more and more people, and I don't know, it's just cool to be that kind of middleman, little cog in that machine.
Speaking of things that are cool, obviously the you getting chased by a bear, since that is a factual story of something that
That
happened.
did happen once, but I was in California. It wasn't Alaska. That was that was a scary moment.
Well, you're stealing my thunder here, Nick. You're stealing my thunder because I want to hear what it is about Alaska that makes it so unique. So, having lived in a lot of places, okay, what is it about Alaska that's so unique?
Um, well, it's cold. Um, it's huge. It's oh, what was it? It's twice the size of Texas. And if it was its own country, it would be the 33rd largest country in the world. Um, and there's just so much there's so much here. There's mountains, glaciers, northern lights, wildlife, like you said. Um, I have seen bears just randomly walk through my backyard. I see foxes on trails all the time, little red foxes. And just
Lots of great pictures of foxes in your Instagram, for the record.
thank you, appreciate it. Um, one of the crazy things about this place is in the winter we get only 3 hours of sunlight, so it's dark pretty much the entire rest of the day. Flip side of that, in the summer, it only gets kind of like twilighty for about 2 or 3 hours. So if you're really into the outdoors, you could be hiking for 16 hours and not get tired and not realize that, hey, maybe it's time to go to sleep. It's just incredibly unique. I love. I got really bored when I lived in the desert. I was like, it's 370 days of sunshine all day, all the time, every summer, nonstop. It's just hot and sunshine. That's it. And I was like, this is really boring. And I wanted some variety, and you never know what's going to happen out here. I think that's one of my favorite parts.
Well, dealing with munitions and being a wildlife photographer and an outdoors photographer in Alaska, there's not a lot of room for boredom there. So I appreciate that perspective. Well, Nick, you've been generous with your time here. Before I let you go, I have a couple quick questions for you. So, no, number one, you seem like a pretty easygoing guy, but I'd love to hear, what is your biggest pet peeve?
Ooh, pet peeves. Okay. Well, that's a good one. I get this on my Instagram a lot too. People ask me all the time. So this one's not very I guess practical, but people that put giant ugly watermarks on their pictures when they're like okay pictures. I'm like, dude, no one's gonna steal that. What are you doing? Just post your pictures. Uh, on the less, I guess, more existential side, um, just laziness. People that can't, they like to make excuses or things like that. I feel like a lot of times it's really just a matter of going out and getting the mission done, getting the job done. No matter what the goal is, doesn't matter. you want to get better shape, you want to become a photographer, you want to, I don't know, score that new job interview, just go, just do it, just do whatever it takes to do it.
Put in the time, do the work. Good things are
Absolutely.
going to happen, but don't talk about
Absolutely.
it. Don't tell me why it's not going to happen. No
Yes.
one wants to
Oh,
hear it.
I hate excuses so much. That's probably, yeah, I'd say that's my biggest pet peeve is excuses for sure.
What's the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
Okay. Best piece of advice. Oh, okay. I had a tech sergeant, which is E6, and I was a E2 fresh out of boot camp at the time, and he told me, of course, I was making excuses at the time for why I couldn't do something, and he told me, he looked at me dead in the face and said, "Your life is your responsibility." And that, like, I mean, I swear it hit me in the soul. It was like your parents saying, "I'm not mad, I'm disappointed in you." And I was I was like, wow, that resonated with me. I'll never forget him. His name was Tech Sergeant Boyd. He's probably either retired or way higher ranked by now, but he told me that, and I was like, wow, that really is true. It kind of goes back to what I said about not making excuses. Just you just gotta go do it. That kind of changed my career for me, actually. It was a short brief moment, and really all he was telling me was, um, he was kind of being a little bit dramatic, I guess you could say, at the time, but he was telling me that even in the small things that we do, for instance, at the time I was bitching about taking out the trash because it was cold, and he kind of sat me down. I was like, your life is your responsibility, and those things are going to reflect in all aspects of your life. So whether it's taking out the trash or sweeping the floors or building the bombs, we all have that mission to do. And I realized, like, not making excuses and just getting out there and doing the work, that's what's going to change things. Otherwise you're just sitting around waiting for something to happen to you. That's never going to happen.
The way you do anything is the way you do everything.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a great lesson for all of us to learn for sure. Well, Nick, listen, we appreciate you joining us. We appreciate you being part of the MuskOx herd. Continue to take pictures of your adventures and wildlife. I think that's a great inspiration for so many people, myself included. So, yeah, again, thank you for joining us and sharing your story today.
Oh yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much.
I, for one, am definitely thankful to have Nick on our side, continuing to protect us out there in the wild and keeping that munitions safe. I hope you guys enjoyed my conversation today with Nick and hearing about his adventures. And I think on behalf of Nick, I can safely say, we hope that this inspires you to go out there and seek a little bit of adventure, regardless of what that means. Maybe it's just a quick hike next to you, but anything to get you outside and start to appreciate the beautiful world that surrounds you. And here at MuskOx, we are huge fans of the outdoors and finding a way to get outside and live that everyday adventure. For those of you who aren't familiar with the brand, please go ahead and check us out at GoMuskOx.com. You may find some pictures that Nick snapped on our website. You might even see him as a model here and there. So again, we thank Nick for getting out there to inspire all of us, protecting all of us as a member of the United States Air Force, and we are thankful to have him as part of the MuskOx herd. Until next time, I am Brad Hoos, host of The Herd Has Spoken.